The rain had been falling for 3 days straight when Maya first saw her. Maya pressed her forehead against the coffee shop window, watching rivulets of water race down the glass like tears on a giant's cheek. The storm outside matched the tempest in her chest, all sharp edges and restless energy that had no place to go. She'd been in Portland for exactly 2 weeks, having fled San Francisco after her life imploded in spectacular fashion. The marketing job she'd poured 5 years into gone. The relationship with Jessica that had felt like walking on glass for months finally shattered. The carefully constructed life she'd built, reduced to 3 suitcases and a one-way ticket north. The bell above the door chimed, and Maya looked up from her laptop where she'd been staring at the same blank document for an hour. A woman entered, shaking droplets from an oversized navy coat. She moved with a kind of quiet grace that made everything around her seem louder and more chaotic by comparison. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple bun, a few escaped strands curling around her face from the humidity. She wore no makeup that Maya could see, yet her skin seemed to glow with a kind of natural radiance that came from someone who slept well and drank enough water and actually took care of herself. Maya watched as the woman, she couldn't have been older than 30, approached the counter with unhurried steps. Even her breathing seemed measured, deliberate. When the barista asked for her order, her voice was soft but clear. "Just a chamomile tea, please. And one of those lavender scones." Maya found herself studying the stranger's hands as she counted out exact change. No rings, nails trimmed short and practical. There was something about those hands that suggested competence, steadiness. They looked like hands that could fix things, build things, heal things. The complete opposite of Maya's own fidgeting fingers that were always drumming against surfaces, picking at cuticles, gesturing wildly when she spoke. The woman found a table in the corner, pulling out a worn paperback and settling in with the kind of contentment Maya envied. She seemed to inhabit her body completely, comfortably, as if she'd never spent a moment wondering if she was too much or too little, or just wrong in some fundamental way. Maya tried to return to her writing, a freelance article about sustainable fashion that she was already a day late on, but her gaze kept drifting to the peaceful figure in the corner. The woman read with the same unhurried attention she'd brought to ordering her tea, occasionally lifting the cup to her lips with movements so economical they seemed choreographed. When Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her sister asking how the fresh start was going, she felt that familiar surge of anxiety rise in her throat. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before giving up entirely. The cursor on her laptop blinked accusingly. Outside, the rain drummed harder against the windows. That's when it happened. The woman in the corner looked up from her book, and for just a moment, their eyes met. Maya felt something settle in her chest, like a bird finally finding a branch to rest on. The woman's gaze was the color of warm honey, and there was something in it that felt like recognition, though they'd never met. The moment lasted perhaps 3 seconds before the woman returned to her reading, but Maya sat transfixed. She'd just experienced something that felt suspiciously like peace, and she couldn't remember the last time that had happened. For the next hour, Maya pretended to work while stealing glances at the woman who read as if books held the secrets of the universe. When the stranger finally gathered her things to leave, Maya felt an inexplicable sense of loss. The woman paused at Maya's table on her way out, close enough that Maya caught a hint of her scent, something clean and warm, like vanilla and fresh air. "The storm's supposed to break tomorrow," the woman said quietly, and Maya realized she was looking at her laptop screen where she'd been scrolling through weather reports instead of working. Maya looked up, startled by the unexpected interaction. Up close, the woman's eyes held flecks of gold that made Maya think of autumn afternoons. "I hope so," Maya managed to say. "I'm not used to all this rain." The woman smiled then, a small curve of lips that transformed her entire face. "Give it time. Sometimes the storms bring exactly what we need." And then she was gone, leaving Maya staring at the empty doorway and wondering if she'd imagined the entire encounter. That night, Maya lay in her studio apartment listening to rain against the windows and thinking about steady hands and honey-colored eyes. For the first time since arriving in Portland, she fell asleep without the familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. She dreamed of golden light and the sound of gentle breathing. True to the stranger's prediction, Maya woke to sunlight streaming through her windows. The storm had passed in the night, leaving the city washed clean and glittering. She found herself hurrying through her morning routine, drawn back to the coffee shop by something she couldn't quite name. The woman wasn't there. Maya ordered her usual double espresso with an extra shot and tried not to feel disappointed. She'd been foolish to expect anything. Portland was full of beautiful, peaceful women who probably dispensed wisdom about storms to anxious strangers on a regular basis. She claimed the same table by the window and opened her laptop, determined to make progress on the article that was now officially late. But the words came easier today, flowing in a way they hadn't in months. She found herself writing about transformation, about the way adversity could strip away everything you thought you needed and reveal what actually mattered. 3 hours later, she'd not only finished the article, but had outlined 2 more. The barista had refilled her coffee cup twice without being asked, and Maya realized she'd been so absorbed in her work that she'd forgotten to check her phone every 5 minutes or scan the room for familiar faces or worry about any of the 1,000 small anxieties that usually plagued her. She was packing up her laptop when she heard it, a voice like warm honey asking for chamomile tea and a lavender scone. Maya's head snapped up so quickly she nearly knocked over her empty cup. There she was, the woman from yesterday, wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater that made her eyes look more green than brown in the afternoon light. Her hair was down today, falling in loose waves around her shoulders. This time, when their eyes met, the woman smiled first. "The sun came out," she said, approaching Maya's table with that same unhurried grace. "It did," Maya replied, acutely aware of how her heart had started beating faster. "You were right about the storm. I'm usually right about the weather. Occupational hazard." The woman gestured to the empty chair across from Maya. "Mind if I sit? All the other tables are taken." Maya looked around and realized the coffee shop had filled up while she'd been lost in her writing. "Of course, please." The woman settled into the chair with fluid economy of movement. Up close, Maya could see that her sweater was hand-knitted, the kind of beautiful, imperfect craftsmanship that spoke of patience and skill. "I'm Sage," the woman said, wrapping her hands around her teacup. "Maya." She paused, then added, "That's a beautiful name." "My parents were hippies. I got off easy. My brother's name is River." Sage's eyes crinkled with amusement. "What brings you to Portland, Maya?" Something about Sage's presence made honesty feel safer than deflection. "I'm running away from my life in San Francisco." "Well, not running exactly. More like strategic retreat. Sometimes retreat is the bravest thing you can do." Sage took a sip of her tea, studying Maya with those perceptive eyes. "What did you retreat from?" Maya found herself telling this stranger things she hadn't even admitted to her sister. About the job that had slowly drained her soul, the relationship that had felt like performing in a play she hadn't auditioned for, the growing sense that she was living someone else's life in her own body. Sage listened without offering advice or platitudes, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of understanding. When Maya finally ran out of words, Sage was quiet for a long moment. "What does your instinct tell you about what comes next?" she asked finally. Maya laughed, but it came out more bitter than she'd intended. "My instincts have been notably unreliable lately. Or maybe you just haven't been listening to them." Sage's voice was gentle but sure. Sometimes we get so used to the noise in our heads that we forget what our actual voice sounds like. There was something about the way Sage spoke that made Maya want to believe her, as if she had access to some fundamental truth about how life worked, how people worked. "What do you do?" Maya asked. "You mentioned occupational hazard about the weather." "I'm a forest ranger. Well, technically a wilderness educator. I work at Mount Hood National Forest, leading groups on backcountry trips, teaching outdoor skills." Sage smiled. Lots of time spent watching weather patterns and reading the sky. That explained the steady hands, the way she seemed so comfortable in her own skin. Maya tried to imagine spending days in the wilderness, responsible for other people's safety, and felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. "That sounds terrifying and amazing," she said. "It's both sometimes, but mostly it's peaceful." Sage finished her tea and glanced at the window where golden afternoon light slanted across the tables. "Would you like to see where I work? I'm heading up there now to prep for a group coming in tomorrow. The drive is beautiful this time of day." Maya's rational mind immediately began cataloging reasons to say no. She barely knew this woman. She had work to do. She didn't have proper shoes for hiking. She was already falling behind on her new life plan of being responsible and focused. But looking at Sage's face, open and patient and utterly without pressure, Maya heard herself saying yes. An hour later, they were winding up a mountain road in Sage's well-worn Subaru, the city falling away below them like a discarded costume. Maya pressed her face to the passenger window, watching Douglas firs grow taller and the air grow cleaner. The car smelled like pine needles and something warm that she was beginning to associate with Sage herself. "Tell me about the forest," Maya said, surprised by how natural it felt to be in this car with this woman she'd known for less than 48 hours. Sage's face lit up in a way that made Maya's chest tighten with something she couldn't name. For the next 30 minutes, Sage painted pictures with words, describing the way morning mist moved through old-growth trees, the sound of elk calls echoing across meadows at dusk, the particular quality of silence that existed miles from any road. When they finally stopped at a trailhead parking area, Maya stepped out into air so clean it made her dizzy. The forest rose around them like a cathedral, all towering columns and filtered light. She could hear water running somewhere nearby, and the wind through the trees sounded like breathing. "This is where I come when the world gets too loud," Sage said, shouldering a well-packed day pack. "There's a place I want to show you if you're up for a short walk." Maya looked down at her completely inappropriate canvas sneakers and shrugged. "Lead the way." They walked in companionable silence, Sage occasionally pointing out plants or animal signs with the unself-conscious expertise of someone who'd spent years learning to read the forest like a book. Maya found her breathing slowing, her shoulders dropping away from her ears. The constant chatter in her mind grew quieter with each step. 20 minutes later, they emerged into a clearing where a creek bubbled over smooth stones, creating a series of small pools that reflected the sky. Sage settled onto a fallen log that had been worn smooth by weather and time, patting the space beside her. Maya sat, acutely aware of the warmth radiating from Sage's body in the cool mountain air. They sat in silence, watching water flow over rocks with a kind of patience Maya had never possessed. "I can see why you come here," Maya said eventually. "It's like the world slows down." "Time moves differently in the forest," Sage agreed. "Nothing here is in a hurry." Maya turned to study Sage's profile, the strong line of her jaw, the way her eyelashes cast shadows on her cheekbones in the dappled light. "How long have you been doing this work?" 6 years. "I moved here from Seattle after my divorce." Sage's voice was matter-of-fact, but Maya caught something underneath. "I needed to remember who I was when I wasn't trying to be what someone else needed." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with recognition. Maya felt that settling sensation in her chest again, as if something restless had finally found its place. "Did you remember who you were?" Sage turned to look at her then, and Maya felt the full weight of those honey-colored eyes. "I'm still figuring it out, but I know more now than I did 6 years ago." They sat in the growing dusk, the sound of water over stones mixing with the distant call of a hawk. Maya realized she hadn't checked her phone once since leaving the coffee shop, hadn't worried about emails or deadlines or any of the urgent trivialities that usually consumed her thoughts. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for bringing me here." "Thank you for coming," Sage replied, and something in her voice made Maya look at her more closely. In the golden light filtering through the trees, Sage looked like something mythical, a wood nymph or forest spirit who'd taken human form. But when she smiled, she was entirely wonderfully real. The drive back to the city passed too quickly, filled with easy conversation about books and travel and the small observations that reveal character. When Sage dropped her off at her apartment, Maya lingered beside the car, reluctant to break the spell of the afternoon. "Would you like to have dinner sometime?" The words tumbled out before Maya could second-guess them. Sage's smile was answer enough. "I'd like that very much." As Maya watched the Subaru disappear around the corner, she realized she was smiling too. For the first time in months, she was looking forward to tomorrow. They fell into a rhythm as natural as seasons changing. Maya would write in the coffee shop each morning, and Sage would appear sometime after lunch, settling into the chair across from her with chamomile tea and whatever book was currently capturing her attention. Sometimes they talked, voices low and intimate across the small table. Other times they simply existed in each other's presence, Maya typing while Sage read, the silence between them comfortable as worn denim. Sage had a gift for asking questions that cut straight to the heart of things. Not invasive questions, but the kind that invited deeper truth if Maya was ready to offer it. She found herself sharing stories she'd never told anyone, about growing up with parents who loved her fiercely but never quite understood her restless energy, about the years she'd spent trying to mold herself into shapes that fit other people's expectations, about the growing certainty that she'd been living her life at the wrong frequency. In return, Sage revealed herself in careful layers. She spoke about her ex-wife Karen, a successful attorney who needed Sage to be smaller, quieter, more convenient. About the years she'd spent dimming her own light to avoid conflict, until she'd nearly forgotten she had light at all. About the moment she'd realized that someone who truly loved her wouldn't need her to be different than she was. "I spent so much energy trying to be peaceful," Sage said one afternoon, her fingers tracing patterns on the wooden table. "But I was confusing peace with silence. Real peace isn't the absence of your true self, it's the presence of it." Maya felt those words settle into her bones like truth she'd been waiting her whole life to hear. 3 weeks into their friendship, though friendship felt like an inadequate word for the magnetic pull Maya felt whenever Sage entered a room, Sage invited her on an overnight camping trip. "There's something I want to show you," she said, "but it requires sleeping under the stars." Maya's first instinct was to catalog all the reasons she couldn't possibly go camping. She didn't own proper gear. She'd never slept outdoors in her life. What if she embarrassed herself? What if she couldn't handle it? But looking at Sage's face, open and hopeful and patient as always, Maya heard herself saying yes again. They left Portland on a Friday afternoon, Sage's Subaru packed with camping equipment and enough food for a weekend. The deeper they drove into the wilderness, the more Maya felt her usual anxieties transforming into something else. Anticipation, maybe, or the kind of nervousness that came with approaching something important. "Where exactly are we going?" Maya asked as they turned onto increasingly narrow roads. "A place called Mirror Lake. It's about 3 miles in from the trailhead." Sage downshifted as they climbed higher into the mountains. "I've been going there for years. It's special." The hike tested every muscle in Maya's body and several she didn't know she had. But Sage set a pace that challenged without overwhelming, stopping frequently to point out plants or animal tracks, turning the difficulty into discovery. When Maya's breathing became labored, Sage would pause at a scenic viewpoint, giving her time to recover while pretending to check the map or adjust her pack. Maya began to understand that this was how Sage moved through the world, attuned to the needs of others without making them feel diminished by her attention. It was a kind of caregiving that felt entirely different from anything Maya had experienced, free of the undertone of martyrdom or resentment she'd grown accustomed to in relationships. They reached Mirror Lake just as the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon. Maya's first glimpse of the water, perfectly still, reflecting the surrounding peaks like a sheet of polished obsidian, literally took her breath away. "Oh," she whispered, dropping her pack where she stood. Sage smiled, watching Maya's face more than the view. "I was hoping you'd react like that." They set up camp on a small rise overlooking the lake, Sage moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. She showed Maya how to stake tent corners and stretch rainflies, how to properly store food away from curious wildlife, how to build a fire that would burn clean and steady. Maya proved surprisingly adept at camp tasks, her city-trained perfectionism translating well to the precise requirements of backcountry living. By the time they'd established their small temporary home, she felt a satisfaction she rarely experienced in her regular life, the deep pleasure of competence in service of immediate, tangible needs. As dusk settled over the lake, they sat beside their fire eating simple food that tasted extraordinary in the mountain air. Sage had brought wine in a lightweight bottle, and they shared it while watching stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. "I've never seen this many stars," Maya said, tipping her head back to take in the full scope of the Milky Way. "Light pollution hides them," Sage replied. "But they're always there. We just forget to look up." They talked late into the night, voices growing softer as the fire burned down to glowing coals. Maya found herself sharing her deepest fears about failure, about never finding her place in the world, about the terror of being truly seen and found wanting. Sage listened with the same attention she brought to everything, occasionally adding kindling to keep the fire alive. When Maya finally ran out of words, Sage was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "What if," she said carefully, "the parts of yourself you think are problems are actually gifts you haven't learned to use yet?" Maya turned to study Sage's face in the firelight. What do you mean? Your restlessness, your intensity, the way your mind moves quickly from one idea to another. What if those aren't flaws to be fixed? What if they're just energy that needs the right direction? The question lodged in Maya's chest like a seed. She'd spent so many years trying to calm herself down, slow herself down, make herself more palatable to people who seemed to find her natural state exhausting. I've never thought of it that way, she admitted. Chaos isn't always destructive, Sage said. Sometimes it's creative. Sometimes it's exactly what's needed to break through things that have gotten too rigid, too stuck. They fell silent then, the weight of understanding settling between them. Maya realized she was crying, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen clearly and not found lacking. When they finally retreated to their respective sleeping bags, Maya lay awake for a long time listening to the small sounds of the wilderness around them. Somewhere across the dying fire, she could hear Sage's breathing, slow and steady as everything else about her. For the first time in her adult life, Maya felt perfectly safe. She woke before dawn, drawn from sleep by a quality of light that didn't exist in cities. Sage was already up, sitting on a log by the water's edge with a steaming mug in her hands. She'd somehow managed to make coffee without waking Maya, another small demonstration of her considerate competence. Maya emerged from the tent and made her way to the lake, accepting the second mug Sage offered without either of them speaking. The water was mirror-still, reflecting the pink and gold of sunrise with perfect clarity. They sat in companionable silence, watching the world wake up around them. A fish jumped in the center of the lake, sending concentric circles rippling outward until they reached the shore. Somewhere in the trees behind them, a bird began singing, a complex melody that seemed to celebrate the simple fact of being alive. Thank you, Maya said eventually. For this. For all of it. Sage turned to look at her, and Maya was struck again by the way those honey-colored eyes seemed to see straight through to her core. Thank you for trusting me enough to come. Something shifted in that moment, some barrier dissolving like mist in sunlight. Maya realized she was in love, not with the idea of Sage, but with the real woman sitting beside her. The woman who moved through the world with such intentional grace, who saw beauty in silence and strength in stillness, who somehow made Maya feel both completely known and entirely free. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. Maya carried the memory of Mirror Lake with her like a talisman as autumn settled over Portland. The leaves turned gold and crimson, and the city took on the cozy intimacy of a place preparing for winter. She and Sage continued their afternoon meetings at the coffee shop, but something had shifted between them, a new awareness that hummed beneath their conversations like an electrical current. Maya found herself studying Sage's hands as she turned the pages of her books, wondering what it would feel like to have those steady fingers trace patterns on her skin. She caught herself memorizing the way Sage's mouth moved when she spoke, the soft sound of her laughter, the particular shade of green her eyes became when she was thinking deeply about something. If Sage noticed Maya's increased attention, she gave no sign. She remained as graciously present as always, asking thoughtful questions about Maya's writing, sharing stories from her work in the forest. But sometimes Maya caught her looking with an expression that made her pulse quicken, a warmth that went beyond friendship, an interest that felt distinctly less than platonic. Maya's writing had transformed. The freelance articles that had once felt like pulling teeth now flowed easily, and she'd started working on something new, a personal essay about transformation, about learning to trust the wilderness in yourself instead of trying to tame it. Her editor loved her recent work, praising a new depth and authenticity in her voice. "Whatever you're doing differently, keep doing it," he'd said over the phone. "This is the best work you've ever submitted." Maya knew exactly what she was doing differently. She was writing as herself instead of as who she thought she should be. She was letting her natural intensity infuse her words instead of constraining it. She was channeling her chaos into creativity instead of seeing it as something to overcome. The shift showed in other areas of her life, too. She'd started taking long walks along the Willamette River, exploring Portland's neighborhoods with the same curious attention Sage brought to reading forest signs. She joined a writers' group that met weekly in a bookstore, finding community among other people who understood the strange compulsion to translate experience into words. For the first time since moving to Portland, Maya felt like she was building a life rather than just surviving one. But the growing intensity of her feelings for Sage was becoming impossible to ignore. One rainy Thursday afternoon, the kind of weather that made the coffee shop feel like a cocoon, Maya found herself staring at Sage's profile as she read, trying to work up the courage to say something, anything, that might reveal the state of her heart. Sage looked up as if sensing her gaze. "You're quiet today." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Just thinking." About. The simple question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility. Maya could deflect, make some joke about her writing deadlines or the weather. Or she could tell the truth. "About you," she said quietly. Sage set down her book, giving Maya her full attention. "What about me?" Maya's courage faltered. What was she supposed to say? That she'd fallen in love with someone she'd known for 6 weeks? That the thought of Sage consumed her thoughts and invaded her dreams? That she'd never felt anything like this before, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying? She started, then stopped, shaking her head. "Never mind. It's nothing." But Sage leaned forward slightly, her eyes serious. "Maya, what is it?" The gentle insistence in her voice was Maya's undoing. The words spilled out before she could stop them. "I think I'm falling in love with you," she said in a rush. "Actually, I know I am. I'm completely, ridiculously in love with you, and I know we haven't known each other very long, and I don't want to ruin what we have, but I can't stop thinking about you, and when I'm not with you, I feel like I'm only half alive, and..." Sage reached across the table and covered Maya's hand with her own, stopping the flood of words. Her touch was warm and sure, and Maya felt some of her panic subside. "Breathe," Sage said softly. Maya took a shaky breath, acutely aware of Sage's thumb moving gently across her knuckles. "Better?" Sage asked. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. Sage was quiet for a long moment, her gaze searching Maya's face. When she finally spoke, her voice was careful, but not unkind. "I care about you very much, Maya. More than I've cared about anyone in a long time. But..." The word hung between them like a blade. Maya felt her heart start to sink. "But I'm scared," Sage continued. "Not of you, but of this. Of how intense it feels. I'm still learning how to trust my own instincts again, and everything about you makes me want to throw caution to the wind." Maya blinked, processing. "Is that bad?" Sage smiled then, a real smile that reached her eyes. "It's terrifying, and wonderful, and completely contrary to how I've been living my life for the past 6 years. So, what does that mean?" Maya asked, afraid to hope. Sage's grip tightened on her hand. "It means I need to be honest with you. I'm falling in love with you too. Have been since that first day in the coffee shop when you looked like you were going to vibrate right out of your skin from anxiety, and all I wanted to do was find some way to help you feel calm. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Really? Really? But Maya. Sage's expression grew serious. I need you to understand something about me. I don't do anything halfway. When I love someone, I love them completely. It ended my marriage because Karen needed someone who could love her lightly, casually. Someone who could be satisfied with surface-level connection. That's not who I am. Maya felt something fierce and glad unfurl in her chest. I don't want light or casual either. I want real. I want everything. Even if everything includes arguments and difficult conversations and me needing space to process when things get intense. Especially then, Maya said without hesitation. I'm tired of relationships where we pretend we don't have edges. Sage lifted their joined hands and pressed a soft kiss to Maya's knuckles. The simple gesture sent warmth shooting through Maya's entire body. In that case, Sage said, her eyes bright with something that looked like joy, would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? As a real date, not just friends having dinner. Maya's smile felt wide enough to split her face. Yes. They sat in the coffee shop until closing time, hands linked across the table, talking about everything and nothing. The rain continued to fall outside, but Maya barely noticed. She felt like she was glowing from the inside out, every cell in her body humming with possibility. When they finally gathered their things to leave, Sage pulled Maya aside in the narrow space between tables. I want to kiss you, she said quietly. But not here, not for the first time. You deserve better than a coffee shop. Maya's heart did something acrobatic in her chest. Tomorrow? Tomorrow, Sage agreed. Maya walked home through the rain in a state of elation that made her want to dance on the sidewalk. She'd taken the leap, revealed her heart, and instead of falling, she'd found herself caught by someone whose feelings matched her own. For the first time in her life, love felt like possibility instead of limitation. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, too excited to sleep. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. Maya changed her outfit 4 times before Sage arrived to pick her up. She'd settled on dark jeans and a burgundy sweater that brought out the amber flecks in her eyes, but now she was second-guessing the choice. Too casual? Not casual enough? She was spiraling into the kind of anxious overthinking that had plagued her entire adult dating life when the knock came at her door. All her worries evaporated the moment she saw Sage standing in the hallway. Sage had traded her usual practical clothes for a midnight blue dress that skimmed her knees and made her eyes look impossibly green. Her hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and she was holding a single sunflower, bright and cheerful and perfectly unexpected. Hi, Sage said, her smile soft and slightly nervous. Hi yourself, Maya managed, accepting the flower. You look different. Beautiful. You look beautiful. Sage's cheeks flushed pink. So do you. They stood there for a moment, suddenly shy with each other in a way they'd never been before. The shift from friendship to something more had added a layer of electricity to every interaction, making Maya hyper-aware of the space between their bodies, the way Sage's gaze lingered on her mouth. Ready? Sage asked. Maya grabbed her jacket and followed Sage to the car, trying to calm the butterflies doing aerial acrobatics in her stomach. She'd been on plenty of first dates before, but this felt different. This felt like it mattered in a way that made her both thrilled and terrified. Sage had chosen a small Italian restaurant in the Pearl District, the kind of intimate place with candlelit tables and soft jazz playing in the background. They were seated in a corner booth that felt private and cozy, like they'd been given their own small world for the evening. "I was nervous about tonight," Sage admitted once they'd ordered wine and were studying their menus. "Which is ridiculous, considering how much time we've spent together." "I changed my outfit 4 times," Maya confessed, "and practiced conversation topics in the mirror." Sage laughed, the sound bright and delighted. "What kind of conversation topics?" "Oh, the classics. How was your day? What's your favorite color? Tell me about your deepest fears and childhood traumas." "Well, when you put it like that." Sage pretended to consider. "My day was good. My favorite color is the green of Douglas fir needles in morning light, and we can save the trauma for dessert." The joke broke the tension, and they fell back into the easy rhythm they'd established over weeks of coffee shop conversations. But underneath the familiar comfort was a new undercurrent of awareness, a heightened attention to each other that made every gesture feel significant. Maya found herself cataloging details she'd somehow missed before. The way Sage's eyes crinkled when she really laughed, the graceful line of her neck when she tilted her head to listen, the unconscious way she gestured when telling a story that particularly engaged her. "You're staring," Sage said softly, catching Maya in the act. "Sorry," Maya said, not feeling sorry at all. I can't believe we're here. Actually here on a date." "Believe it," Sage said, reaching across the table to touch Maya's hand. "I've been wanting this for weeks." "Really? You hit it well." Sage's thumb traced patterns on Maya's palm, sending shivers up her arm. "I'm good at hiding what I want. Sometimes too good. It's something I'm trying to unlearn." "What else do you want?" Maya asked, emboldened by the wine and the candlelight and the way Sage was looking at her. Sage's gaze intensified. "Right now? I want to know what you taste like. I want to take you home and spend hours learning every sound you make. I want to wake up tomorrow morning with you in my arms." The words hung in the air between them, honest and direct, and so charged with desire that Maya felt heat pool low in her belly. "That's very specific," she managed. "I told you I don't do anything halfway." Maya's pulse quickened. She'd never been with someone who stated their wants so clearly, without games or manipulation or the exhausting dance of trying to guess what the other person was thinking. "For the record," Maya said, her voice lower than usual, "I want all of those things too." Sage's smile was slow and promising. "Good to know." They somehow managed to get through dinner, though Maya could barely focus on her food. Every time Sage's fingers brushed hers as they shared bites of each other's meals, every time Sage leaned closer to make a point, Maya felt the space between them crackling with possibility. When the check came, they reached for it simultaneously, their hands colliding over the leather folder. "I asked you out," Sage said. "I pay." "This is in the 1950s, Maya protested. "We can split it." Sage's grip tightened on the check. "Maya, let me do this. Please." There was something in her voice that made Maya pause, a note of vulnerability that suggested this mattered more than simple courtesy. "Okay," Maya said softly. "Thank you." Outside the restaurant, they walked slowly toward Sage's car, both reluctant to end the evening. The October air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of wood smoke from someone's fireplace. Portland glittered around them, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement left from an earlier shower. "I had a wonderful time," Maya said as they reached the Subaru. Past tense. Sage asked, moving closer. "Because I was hoping the evening wasn't over yet." Maya's breath caught. They were standing so close now that she could see the golden flecks in Sage's eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from her body. "What did you have in mind?" Maya asked. Instead of answering with words, Sage cupped Maya's face gently in her hands. Her thumbs brushed across Maya's cheekbones as she studied her face with that same careful attention she brought to everything. "I'm going to kiss you now," Sage said quietly. "If that's okay with you." Maya's response was to rise on her toes and close the distance between them. The first touch of Sage's lips was soft, tentative, a question rather than a statement. But when Maya sighed and melted into her, the kiss deepened. Sage tasted like wine and promises, and her mouth moved against Maya's with a patience that made Maya's knees weak. When they finally broke apart, Maya was breathless and dizzy and wanting more. "Come home with me," Sage whispered, her forehead resting against Maya's. Maya's answer was another kiss, deeper this time, her hands fisting in the soft fabric of Sage's dress. Sage's house was a small craftsman bungalow in southeast Portland, surrounded by a garden that even in autumn showed signs of careful tending. Wind chimes hung from the front porch, creating gentle music in the evening breeze. Inside, the space reflected everything Maya had come to love about Sage: thoughtfully chosen furniture that prioritized comfort over showiness, bookshelves that reached the ceiling, plants thriving in every available patch of sunlight. The walls were covered with photographs from Sage's wilderness adventures, and the air smelled faintly of the lavender sachets Maya spotted tucked among the couch cushions. "It's perfect," Maya said, meaning it. "It's so you." Sage smiled, suddenly seeming nervous again. "Would you like some tea? Or wine? I have this bottle of Pinot Noir that I've been saving for." Maya silenced her by stepping closer and placing her hands on Sage's waist. "I don't want tea or wine," she said. "I want you." Sage's breath caught. "Maya, unless you've changed your mind. If you need more time or—" This time it was Sage who cut her off with a kiss, urgent and deep and full of the want they'd been dancing around all evening. Maya felt herself being pressed backward until her shoulders hit the living room wall, Sage's body warm and solid against hers. "I haven't changed my mind," Sage murmured against her neck, pressing soft kisses along the sensitive skin there. "I've been thinking about this since the day I met you." Maya's hands found the zipper of Sage's dress, and she paused. "Are you sure?" Sage pulled back to look at her, eyes dark with desire but clear with certainty. "I'm sure. Are you?" "Never been more sure of anything in my life." What happened next unfolded with the same unhurried grace that characterized everything Sage did. She led Maya to her bedroom, a sanctuary of soft colors and natural textures that felt like being embraced by the forest itself. Moonlight streamed through gauze curtains, painting everything in silver and shadow. They undressed each other slowly, reverently, each revealed inch of skin met with gentle touches and whispered praise. Sage's body was lean and strong from years of outdoor work, marked with small scars that spoke of adventures and close calls. Maya traced each one with her fingertips, learning the geography of this woman she'd come to love. When Sage's hands finally mapped the curves of Maya's body, Maya understood why people wrote poetry about touch. Every caress felt like worship, every kiss like a promise. Sage moved with the same patient attention she brought to reading weather patterns or tracking animal signs, as if Maya were a text written in a language she was fluent in. "You're so beautiful," Sage whispered, her mouth tracing a path along Maya's collarbone. "So perfect." Maya had never felt less self-conscious about her body, never felt more completely seen and accepted. When Sage's touch grew more intimate, Maya arched into her with a soft cry that made Sage smile against her skin. "That's it," Sage murmured. "Let me hear you." Maya had always been quiet in bed, self-conscious about making noise, worried about being too much. But something about Sage's encouragement, the obvious pleasure she took in Maya's responses, made those inhibitions fall away. She let herself be vocal, let herself be present in her body in a way she'd never allowed before. When Sage brought her to climax with skillful fingers and endless patience, Maya cried out with a sound that was part pleasure, part relief, part recognition. This was what she'd been missing, not just the physical satisfaction, but the emotional intimacy of being completely vulnerable with someone who held that vulnerability as sacred. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Sage's bed, Maya's head on Sage's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. The air smelled like sex and the lavender lotion Sage used, and Maya felt more at peace than she had in years. That was... Maya started, then trailed off, not having words adequate to the experience. "I know," Sage said softly, her fingers combing through Maya's hair. "It was." Maya lifted her head to look at Sage's face in the moonlight. "I love you," she said, the words feeling both weighty and natural. Sage's smile was radiant. "I love you too." They made love again in the early hours of morning, slower this time, learning each other's rhythms and preferences. Maya discovered that Sage was surprisingly vocal when aroused, that she liked to maintain eye contact during intimate moments, that she had a sensitive spot just below her left ear that made her gasp when kissed. When they finally fell asleep as dawn was breaking, Maya felt like she'd found something she hadn't even known she was looking for, not just romantic love, but a sense of home in another person's arms. Maya woke to the smell of coffee and something delicious cooking. For a moment, she was disoriented, unfamiliar with the quality of light streaming through gauze curtains. Then memory flooded back, Sage's hands on her body, the sound of her name whispered like a prayer, the feeling of coming apart and being held together simultaneously. She found Sage in the kitchen, wearing a faded flannel shirt that barely covered her thighs, humming softly as she flipped pancakes at the stove. The sight was so domestic, so perfectly right, that Maya felt her chest tighten with emotion. "Good morning," she said from the doorway. Sage turned, her face lighting up with a smile that made Maya weak in the knees all over again. "Good morning, beautiful. How did you sleep?" "Like the dead," Maya admitted, though not for very long. Sage's cheeks flushed pink. "No complaints here. Coffee." Maya accepted the mug Sage offered, breathing in the rich aroma. It was perfect, strong but not bitter, with just enough cream to smooth the edges. Of course, Sage would know exactly how she liked her coffee, even though Maya was certain she'd never specifically mentioned it. "How did you know?" she asked. "I pay attention," Sage said simply, transferring pancakes to a plate. "You order a double espresso with cream, no sugar." I extrapolated. Maya felt that familiar flutter of amazement at being so thoroughly seen. "What else have you noticed?" Sage set the plate of pancakes on the small kitchen table and pulled Maya close, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "That you fidget with your pen when you're thinking. That you always sit facing the door in restaurants. That you laugh with your whole body when something really delights you. That you're self-conscious about your morning hair, even though it's absolutely adorable." Maya reached up self-consciously to smooth her surely disheveled locks, but Sage caught her hand. "Don't," she said gently. I love seeing you like this. Unguarded, natural. You're beautiful in the morning. They ate breakfast, sitting close together at the small table, knees touching under the worn wood. The pancakes were perfect, light and fluffy with a hint of vanilla, and Maya realized she was ravenous. She'd barely eaten anything at dinner the night before, too nervous and excited to focus on food. "These are incredible," she said around a bite. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" Trial and error, mostly. Living alone for 6 years forces you to either learn to feed yourself well or resign yourself to a steady diet of cereal and takeout. Sage poured more coffee for both of them. I chose the former. Maya tried to imagine the life Sage had built for herself after her divorce. Quiet mornings like this one, solitary meals prepared with care, the kind of self-sufficiency that came from learning to be your own best company. It sounded lonely and peaceful in equal measure. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Living alone, I mean." Sage considered the question with the same thoughtfulness she brought to everything. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it, not having to consider another person's needs or preferences. But..." She reached across the table to touch Maya's hand. "Waking up with you this morning, making breakfast for 2, it doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like abundance." Maya felt tears prick her eyes at the simple honesty of it. "I've never had that before. Someone who made room for me without making it feel like a sacrifice." What did it feel like before? Maya thought about Jessica, about the constant sense that she was taking up too much space, requiring too much energy. Like I was always apologizing for existing. Like love was something I had to earn by being smaller, quieter, less complicated. Sage's grip tightened on her hand. "You never have to apologize for existing with me. Not ever." The words lodged in Maya's chest like seeds, like promises waiting to grow into new ways of being. After breakfast, they took their coffee to Sage's back porch and sat on a wooden swing that overlooked her garden. Even in autumn, the space was beautiful, raised beds filled with late-season vegetables, fruit trees heavy with apples and pears, herbs growing wild and fragrant along the fence line. "You grew all this?" Maya asked, impressed. "Most of it. Gardening is like wilderness guiding in some ways. You learn to work with natural systems instead of fighting them. Plants want to grow. You just have to give them what they need and get out of their way." Maya wondered if Sage was talking about more than plants. The thought made her smile. They spent the morning in comfortable intimacy, reading the paper together, taking turns in the shower, discussing plans for the day with the easy consideration of long-term partners. It struck Maya how natural it all felt, as if they'd been sharing weekend mornings for years instead of hours. When Maya reluctantly mentioned that she should probably go home to change clothes and check her email, Sage walked her to the door with obvious reluctance. "I don't want you to leave," Sage said, pulling Maya close for a lingering kiss. "I don't want to leave either. But I have that article to finish, and you said you have to prep for a group tomorrow." "Very responsible of us," Sage murmured against her lips. "We're adults. We have obligations." Adult obligations." Sage's hand slipped lower, pulling Maya flush against her. "What if I said I had an obligation to make you come again before you leave?" Maya's knees went weak. "I'd say that's a very important obligation. Can't argue with duty." They didn't make it back to the bedroom. Sage pressed Maya against the front door and slipped her hand under Maya's borrowed shirt, finding her already wet and ready. Maya came apart right there in the entryway, muffling her cries against Sage's shoulder while autumn sunlight streamed through the windows. "God, I love how responsive you are," Sage whispered, holding Maya steady as tremors ran through her body. I could spend all day just watching you fall apart. Don't tempt me, Maya gasped. I have a deadline. But she was smiling as she said it, feeling loose-limbed and satisfied and completely, utterly happy. Maya finally made it home an hour later, floating on a cloud of post-orgasmic bliss and the kind of joy that made her want to call her sister and share every detail. She restrained herself, barely, and settled for texting Sage a simple, "Thank you for last night. And this morning. And the door." Sage's response came immediately. "Thank you for being brave enough to tell me how you felt. I can't wait to see you again." Maya hugged her phone to her chest like a teenager and tried to focus on her article about sustainable fashion. It was hopeless. Every few minutes, her mind would drift to the memory of Sage's hands on her body, the sound of her name spoken like a prayer, the incredible rightness of waking up beside someone who loved her chaos instead of trying to contain it. For the first time in her life, Maya understood what people meant when they talked about being happy. Not the fleeting pleasure of a good meal or a successful project, but the deep, abiding contentment that came from being known and loved for exactly who you were. She was in love, and it felt like coming alive. November brought rain, and the kind of gray skies that made Portland feel like it existed underwater. Maya had expected the weather to dampen her mood. She'd always been susceptible to seasonal depression, but instead she found herself energized by the cocoon-like intimacy it created. She and Sage had settled into a rhythm of spending 3 or 4 nights a week together, alternating between Maya's studio apartment and Sage's bungalow depending on their schedules. They developed their own small rituals: Saturday morning hikes when the weather permitted, Sunday evening cooking sessions where Sage taught Maya techniques she'd learned from years of feeding herself well, quiet evenings reading together while rain drummed against the windows. Maya's writing had exploded with new energy and direction. The personal essay she'd started about transformation had grown into something larger, a memoir and essays about learning to trust the wildness in yourself instead of trying to tame it. Her editor was thrilled with the direction, and she'd gotten interest from 2 literary agents who'd seen her work in magazines. "You're glowing," her sister Emma said during one of their weekly video calls. "Like literally glowing. What's going on up there?" Maya tried to play it cool, but her smile gave her away. "I'm seeing someone." "Seeing someone or seeing someone?" Emma leaned closer to her laptop camera. "Because you look like someone who's getting very good, very regular sex." "Emma, I'm right, aren't I? Tell me everything. What's her name? What does she do? How did you meet? Is she the reason you've stopped complaining about Portland?" Maya found herself spilling everything. Well, not everything, but enough to paint a picture of Sage that made Emma's eyes light up with interest and approval. "She sounds perfect for you," Emma said when Maya finished. "Grounded enough to balance your intensity, but not so rigid that she tries to dim your light. When do I get to meet her?" "Maybe at Christmas, if you still want to come up." "Oh, I'm definitely coming now. I need to investigate this woman who's made my sister happy for the first time in years." After the call, Maya sat in her apartment thinking about Emma's words. Was she happy? The question would have seemed ridiculous a few months ago. Happiness felt like such a foreign concept, something other people experienced but not her. But now, taking inventory of her life, she realized that yes, she was happy. Deeply, authentically happy in a way that had nothing to do with external circumstances and everything to do with finally feeling at home in her own skin. The realization made her want to share it with Sage immediately. She found Sage at her kitchen table, grading essays from a wilderness education workshop she'd taught that weekend. Sage looked up when Maya burst through the door with probably manic energy, but instead of seeming annoyed by the interruption, she smiled with the kind of delight that made Maya's heart flip. "Well, hello there," Sage said, pushing her reading glasses up on her head. "Someone's in a good mood." "I just realized something," Maya announced, dropping her bag and moving to straddle Sage's lap in the kitchen chair. "I'm happy." Sage's hands settled on Maya's hips, anchoring her. "Just realized? What gave it away?" "My sister said I was glowing. And then I started thinking about it, and I am happy, like genuinely, sustainably happy for the first time in maybe ever." Sage's expression grew soft and wondering. "How does it feel?" Maya considered. "Like I've been holding my breath my whole life and finally remembered how to exhale. Like I've been trying to squeeze myself into clothes that didn't fit and finally found something made for my actual body." "And what do you think changed?" Maya leaned down to kiss Sage softly. "You. Us. But also me. I stopped trying to fix myself and started trying to understand myself instead." Sage's hands moved up to frame Maya's face. "You were never broken, love. You were just in the wrong environment." The casual endearment, love, sent warmth spreading through Maya's chest. Sage had started using it over the past few weeks, dropping it into conversations with the same natural ease she brought to everything else. "Is that your professional opinion, Ranger Williams?" "That's my personal opinion, Maya-chan, as someone who's watched you bloom over the past few months." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "Good scared or bad scared?" Maya thought about it. Good scared. Like standing at the edge of a cliff before you jump into deep water. Terrifying, but exhilarating. Sage smiled. "I know exactly what you mean." They made love on Sage's kitchen table, scattering essays and pushing aside the laptop with urgent hands. Maya loved how easily they'd learned to communicate desire, a look, a touch, a whispered request that always met with enthusiastic consent. Sex with Sage felt like a conversation conducted in a language Maya was finally fluent in. Afterward, they lay tangled together on Sage's couch, sharing a bottle of wine and talking about everything and nothing. Maya felt loose-limbed and satisfied, her head pillowed on Sage's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. "Emma wants to meet you at Christmas," Maya said drowsily. "I'd like that." "Will she grill me about my intentions toward her baby sister?" "Probably." Emma's very protective. She might also ask to see her credit report and references from previous girlfriends. Sage's laugh rumbled through her chest. "What about your parents? Will they want to meet me too?" Maya tensed slightly. Her relationship with her parents was complicated. They loved her, but had never quite known what to do with her restless energy and unconventional choices. She'd been dreading the conversation about Sage, not because they were homophobic, but because they had a way of making her feel like every relationship decision was somehow evidence of her general inability to settle down and be responsible. "Eventually," she said carefully. "They're a lot. Very well-meaning, but very invested in everyone around them making conventional choices." Sage's hand stroked soothingly through Maya's hair. "We don't have to rush anything. I'm not going anywhere." The simple assurance made Maya's chest tight with gratitude. "You say that now, but wait until you meet them. My mom will probably ask when we're getting married and having babies within the first 5 minutes." "And what would you want me to tell her?" The question caught Maya off guard. They hadn't talked about the future in concrete terms, where their relationship was heading, what they wanted long-term. She'd been so focused on the joy of the present that she hadn't let herself think too far ahead. "I don't know," she admitted. "What would you want to tell her?" Sage was quiet for a moment, her fingers continuing their gentle movement through Maya's hair. "I'd want to tell her that I've never been more certain about another person in my life. That I can see a future with you that includes all the things that matter: partnership, adventure, building something meaningful together. But I'd probably just say that we're taking things one day at a time and very happy." Maya lifted her head to look at Sage's face. "You can see a future with me? Can't you see one with me?" Maya realized she could. For the first time in any relationship, she could actually imagine years stretching ahead, not with fear or claustrophobia, but with anticipation. She could see lazy Sunday mornings and difficult conversations and adventures she hadn't even thought of yet. She could see growing old with this woman, watching their faces change and their bodies age while their connection deepened. "Yeah," she said softly. "I can." Sage smiled, the expression radiant in the lamplight. "Good. Because I'm planning to stick around for a very long time." Maya kissed her then, tasting wine and promises and the bright possibility of forever. Outside, rain continued to fall, but inside Sage's house, wrapped in warmth and love and the kind of contentment Maya had spent 32 years searching for, she felt like the luckiest person alive. December arrived with an ice storm that knocked out power across half of Portland and turned the city into a crystalline wonderland. Maya woke in Sage's bed to silence. No hum of the refrigerator, no click of the heater cycling on, just the profound quiet that comes when technology stops and the world reverts to something more primitive. "Power's out," Sage murmured, her voice sleep-rough and warm against Maya's neck. "How can you tell without even opening your eyes?" The quality of sound changes. "And it's cold." Sage pulled Maya closer, sharing body heat under the pile of blankets. "We should probably get up and assess the situation, but I'm too comfortable to move." Maya burrowed deeper into Sage's embrace. 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. They lay in the gray morning light, listening to the subtle sounds of ice settling on tree branches outside. Maya felt utterly content, warm and safe and exactly where she belonged. This was what happiness felt like, she realized. Not the manic joy of new experiences or achievements, but the deep peace of being completely present in a moment that felt perfect. When they finally dragged themselves from bed, they discovered that the ice storm had knocked out power to most of the neighborhood. Sage moved through her house with the calm competence Maya had come to love, checking the temperature, gathering candles and flashlights, assessing their supplies. "We've got enough food for several days," she reported. "The gas stove still works, so we can cook and make coffee. Plenty of firewood for heat. We're in good shape." Maya watched Sage build a fire in the living room fireplace, admiring the easy way she handled the logs and kindling. "You're very good at this." Years of backcountry guiding. You learn to be prepared for anything. Soon they had a cozy fire crackling, and Sage made coffee using a camping pot over the gas burner. They settled on the couch with steaming mugs, wrapped in blankets and watching flames dance in the fireplace. "This is nice," Maya said, surprising herself. A few months ago, a power outage would have sent her into spirals of anxiety about work deadlines and communication with clients. Now, trapped in Sage's house with no internet or electricity, she felt remarkably calm. "You sound surprised." "I am, a little. I'm usually anxious when I can't control my environment. But this feels..." She searched for the right word. "Adventure-like." like we're pioneers or something. Sage smiled, settling closer on the couch. That's because you're learning to trust yourself. When you know you can handle whatever comes up, unexpected situations stop feeling threatening and start feeling like opportunities. Maya considered this. Is that what happened to you after your divorce? Learning to trust yourself. Among other things. Sage stared into the fire, her expression thoughtful. Karen used to handle everything. All the planning, all the decision-making, all the logistics of our life together. I was happy to let her because she was so good at it, and I preferred to focus on my work. But when she left, I realized I'd forgotten how to take care of myself. I had to relearn everything. How to manage money, how to fix things when they broke, how to make decisions without constantly seeking someone else's approval. That sounds terrifying. It was. But also liberating. I discovered I was more capable than I'd given myself credit for. And more resilient. Sage turned to look at Maya. I think you're discovering the same thing. Maya thought about the past few months, how she'd navigated the move to Portland, built a new professional network, found community among other writers. How she'd survived the vulnerability of falling in love and found it made her stronger instead of weaker. I used to think independence meant not needing anyone, she said. But being with you has taught me that real independence means knowing you can take care of yourself, so you choose to be with someone because you want to, not because you have to. Exactly. Sage kissed her temple. Interdependence instead of codependence. They spent the day in easy companionship, reading by firelight, cooking simple meals on the gas stove, playing card games Maya half remembered from childhood. Without the constant distraction of phones and computers, they fell into the kind of unhurried conversation that revealed new layers of each other's histories and personalities. Maya learned that Sage had wanted to be a marine biologist as a child, that she'd briefly considered joining the Peace Corps after college, that she still sometimes dreamed about the house she'd shared with Karen and woke up confused about where she was. Sage learned that Maya had been an obsessive reader as a kid, creating elaborate fantasy worlds in her backyard, that she'd once seriously considered dropping out of college to follow a band around the country, that she still kept a journal where she wrote letters to her future self. As afternoon faded to evening, they made dinner by candlelight, pasta with vegetables from Sage's garden that she'd preserved in the fall, accompanied by wine from a bottle they'd been saving for a special occasion. What makes this occasion special? Maya asked as Sage poured the wine. Power outages don't happen very often. And Sage paused, looking suddenly shy. I have something I want to tell you. Maya's heart skipped. Good something or concerning something? Good something. I hope. Sage took a sip of wine, gathering courage. I've been thinking about what you said the other night, about being happy for the first time. And I realized I could say the same thing. But more than that, I've been thinking about the future. Our future. Maya set down her fork, giving Sage her full attention. I know we haven't been together very long, Sage continued. But I also know how I feel about you, and I know what I want. I want to build a life with you, Maya. I want to wake up beside you for the next 50 years. I want to fight with you and make up with you and figure out all the complicated logistics of sharing a life with another person. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Sage. I'm not proposing, Sage said quickly. Not yet. But I'm declaring my intentions. I want you to know that this isn't casual for me, that I'm all in if you'll have me. Maya reached across the table to take Sage's hands in hers. I'm all in too. Completely, terrifyingly, wonderfully all in. Sage's smile was radiant in the candlelight. Yeah. Yeah. I love you, Sage. Not just the easy parts, but all of you. I love your patience and your competence, and the way you make me feel safe enough to be completely myself. I love how you see the world and how you move through it. I want to build a life with you too. They sealed the declaration with a kiss that tasted like wine and promises and the future they were brave enough to claim together. That night, they made love by firelight, their bodies golden and flickering in the dancing shadows. Maya had never felt more beautiful, more desired, more completely seen and accepted. When Sage whispered, "I love you," against her skin, Maya felt the words settle into her bones like truth she'd been waiting her whole life to hear. Later, they lay tangled together under a pile of blankets, the fire crackling softly in the background. The power was still out, the house dark except for the warm glow from the fireplace. But Maya felt illuminated from within, glowing with the kind of happiness that came from knowing you were exactly where you belonged. "The ice will melt tomorrow," Sage said drowsily. "The power will come back on, and life will return to normal." "Will it, though?" Maya asked. "Return to normal?" Sage tightened her arms around Maya. "No. I don't think anything will ever be normal again. And I'm glad." Maya smiled into the darkness. She was glad, too. 1 year later, Maya woke to the sound of rain against the windows and the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. For a moment, she let herself float in that space between sleep and full consciousness, cataloging the small details that had become the texture of her daily life. The weight of Sage's arm across her waist, the quality of morning light filtering through curtains they'd chosen together, the knowledge that downstairs, Sage was already up and moving through the rituals that started their days. They'd moved in together 6 months ago, combining Maya's books with Sage's outdoor gear, her chaotic energy with Sage's steady calm. The house was still Sage's craftsman bungalow, but now it bore traces of Maya's presence too, her vintage writing desk in the sunny corner of the living room, her extensive tea collection sharing cabinet space with Sage's camping equipment, photographs from their adventures together mixed among Sage's wilderness shots on the walls. Maya had worried about losing herself in domesticity, about whether she was built for the kind of settled partnership that involved shared grocery lists and decisions about whose turn it was to take out the trash. But living with Sage had turned out to be the opposite of constraining. Having a secure home base made her feel braver about taking risks in other areas of her life, more willing to chase ideas that might lead nowhere and trust that Sage would be there to celebrate the successes and offer comfort during the failures. Her book, the memoir and essays about learning to trust her own wildness, had sold to a publisher in New York. She'd just finished the final draft and was waiting to hear back from her editor. The advance wasn't huge, but it was enough to give her breathing room, to let her focus on the writing that mattered most instead of churning out articles about topics she didn't care about. More importantly, the process of writing the book had helped her understand her own story in new ways. She could see now how all the restlessness and intensity she'd been taught to view as problems had actually been her psyche's way of resisting a life that wasn't right for her. The chaos hadn't been destructive. It had been creative, breaking down structures that weren't serving her so something better could grow in their place. Maya stretched and patted downstairs in bare feet and an oversized t-shirt that belonged to Sage. She found her partner in the kitchen, hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing hiking pants and a fleece jacket. Her wilderness education program had grown over the past year, and she now led trips almost every weekend during good weather. "Morning beautiful," Sage said, holding out a mug of coffee made exactly the way Maya liked it. "Morning yourself. You're up early, even for you." I want to check the trail conditions before my group arrives. The rain last night might have washed out some of the creek crossings. Sage leaned against the counter, studying Maya with the same careful attention she'd shown from the beginning. You look happy this morning, Maya considered. She'd gotten better at recognizing happiness over the past year, at trusting the feeling instead of waiting for the other shoe to drop. I am happy, she said. I'm excited about the book, excited about the weekend, excited about. She gestured around the kitchen at the life they'd built together. All of this. Sage smiled. All of this. This house, this relationship, this version of myself that I get to be with you. A year ago, I didn't even know it was possible to feel this settled and this free at the same time. Sage set down her coffee mug and moved closer, reaching up to smooth Maya's sleep-tangled hair. You know what I love most about you? My devastating wit and incredible sexual prowess? Well, yes, obviously. Sage's eyes crinkled with amusement. But what I love most is how fully you inhabit your life now. You're not performing being Maya Chen anymore. You're just being her. It's beautiful to witness. Maya felt the familiar flutter of wonder at being so completely seen. I love you too, she said, rising on her toes to kiss Sage softly. Have a good day in the woods. Try not to let any of your students fall off any cliffs. I make no promises. Some of them seem determined to test gravity. Sage gathered her day pack and rain gear. What are you going to work on today? I want to start outlining the next book. My editor thinks there might be interest in a collection about relationships, how we learn to love and be loved authentically. Maya grinned. I have some recent experience in that area. Just some. Sage teased. Extensive recent experience. After Sage left, Maya settled at her desk with a fresh cup of coffee and her laptop. Outside, the rain had settled into the gentle, steady rhythm that made Portland feel like a city under glass. She opened a new document and stared at the blank page, thinking about how to capture the complex alchemy of two people learning to love each other well. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. How's my favorite sister-in-law to be? Maya smiled and typed back. We're not engaged yet being the operative word. Sage is totally going to propose soon. I can tell. How can you possibly tell from 3,000 miles away? The way she looks at you in the photos you send. Like you hung the moon, and she's planning to spend the rest of her life basking in your light. Maya felt warmth spread through her chest. She and Sage had talked about marriage in abstract terms. Someday, when the time felt right, when they'd been together long enough to feel certain about the future they wanted to build. But they were in no rush. They'd both learned the difference between love that was desperate and love that was sure, and what they had felt unshakable enough to last. She was deep in outlining her new book when her phone rang. Sage's name appeared on the screen, and Maya answered immediately. Hey, shouldn't you be leading nature enthusiasts through the wilderness right now? I am, but we're taking a lunch break, and I wanted to hear your voice. Sage's words were slightly breathless, as if she'd been hiking. Also, I have a question for you. Shoot. What are you doing next weekend? Maya checked her mental calendar. Nothing specific. Why? Would you like to go camping? Just the two of us. No work groups or obligations. I found this incredible spot last month that I've been saving to share with you. Maya's pulse quickened. She'd come to associate Sage's special places with significant moments in their relationship. The creek where they'd first talked about their feelings. Mirror Lake where Maya had realized she was in love. That sounds perfect, she said. What's the occasion? Do we need an occasion to disappear into the wilderness together? No, but you sound like you have something specific in mind. Sage was quiet for a moment, and Maya could hear voices in the background, her group preparing to resume their hike. I do have something specific in mind, Sage said finally. But I want it to be a surprise. Will you trust me? Always, Maya said without hesitation. Good. I love you, Maya Chin. I love you too, Sage Williams. After they hung up, Maya sat staring at her phone with a growing sense of anticipation. Sage's voice had held something she couldn't quite identify: excitement, nervousness, a barely contained energy that was unusual for someone so naturally calm. She tried to focus on her writing, but her mind kept drifting to possibilities. What could Sage have planned that required a special camping spot and secrecy? Maya had learned to trust Sage's surprises. They were always thoughtful, always perfectly calibrated to what Maya needed or wanted, even when she didn't know it herself. The week passed slowly, filled with the ordinary routines that had become precious in their familiarity. Maya finished her book outline and sent it to her editor. Sage led 2 more wilderness groups and spent an evening repairing gear for the upcoming trip. They cooked dinner together, read in companionable silence, made love with the easy intimacy of people who knew each other's bodies as well as their own. But underneath the normalcy, Maya sensed an undercurrent of anticipation in Sage, a barely perceptible increase in energy, moments when she caught Sage watching her with an expression Maya couldn't quite read. Friday evening, as they packed for their weekend trip, Maya's curiosity finally got the better of her. "Are you going to tell me where we're going?" she asked, watching Sage carefully select gear. "A place called Hidden Valley. It's about 4 hours from here, deep in the Cascade Wilderness." Sage held up 2 sleeping bags, considered, then packed the warmer ones. "Very remote, very beautiful. I think you'll love it. 4-hour hike or 4-hour drive. Drive plus about 6 miles of hiking. Nothing too strenuous, but we'll be completely off-grid for the weekend." Maya felt the familiar flutter of excitement that came with the prospect of disappearing into the wilderness with Sage. Some of her happiest memories from the past year had been created in wild places, learning to read weather patterns, discovering she was braver than she'd thought, finding peace in the vast silence that existed beyond cell phone coverage. They left Portland early Saturday morning, driving east as the sun climbed over the Cascade Mountains. Maya watched the landscape change from urban to suburban to rural to wild, feeling the familiar loosening in her chest that came with distance from civilization. Sage had made a playlist for the drive, music that matched their journey from city to wilderness, starting with indie rock and gradually shifting to more ambient, nature-inspired sounds. They talked easily about books they were reading, plans for the holidays, Maya's idea for a writing retreat that would combine wilderness immersion with creative practice. The trailhead was little more than a dirt parking area beside a narrow creek. Maya shouldered her pack, lighter than Sage's, but still containing everything she needed for 2 days in the backcountry, and followed Sage onto a trail that immediately disappeared into old-growth forest. The hike was beautiful and challenging, taking them through groves of Douglas fir and cedar that made Maya feel like she was walking through a cathedral. They climbed steadily for the first few miles, then followed a ridge line that offered glimpses of distant peaks through the trees. Maya had become a much stronger hiker over the past year, her city-soft muscles adapting to the demands of wilderness travel. She could keep pace with Sage now without embarrassing herself, could read the subtle signs that indicated weather changes or difficult terrain ahead. "Tell me about this place. Maya said as they paused at a stream crossing to filter water. How did you find it? Pure accident, Sage replied, working the pump handle on their water filter. I was leading a group to a different destination last summer, and we took a wrong turn. Instead of retracing our steps, I decided to follow the trail and see where it led. We ended up here, and it was so beautiful that I made note of the coordinates. And you've been saving it for me? Sage looked up from the water filter, her expression soft. I've been saving it for us. They reached Hidden Valley in the late afternoon, emerging from dense forest into a meadow that took Maya's breath away. The valley was perfectly circular, surrounded by granite peaks that rose like the walls of a natural amphitheater. A stream meandered through the center, creating a series of small pools that reflected the sky. Wildflowers dotted the grass despite the late season, and the air smelled like pine and snow and something indefinably clean. Oh my God, Maya whispered, dropping her pack where she stood. Sage, this is incredible. Sage was watching Maya's face instead of the view, her expression bright with satisfaction. I was hoping you'd react like that. They set up camp beside the stream, working with the easy coordination they'd developed over months of wilderness adventures. Maya had become proficient at camp tasks, able to stake a tent and build a fire circle without guidance. The competence still surprised her sometimes. This evidence that she could take care of herself in environments that had once seemed impossibly foreign. As the sun began to set, painting the granite peaks gold and rose, they sat beside their fire sharing a simple dinner of pasta and vegetables. The silence around them was profound. No cars, no planes, no electronic hum. Just the sound of water over stones and wind through pine needles. This is perfect, Maya said, leaning against Sage's shoulder. Whatever you're planning, wherever this weekend leads, right now is perfect. Sage's arm tightened around her. I'm glad you think so. They stayed up late, talking and stargazing and feeding their fire with the dry wood Sage had packed. Maya felt the familiar peace that came with being completely present in a wild place, her city-conditioned anxiety dissolving into something larger and more spacious. When they finally retreated to their tent, they made love with the unhurried attention of people who had nowhere else to be and nothing else to do but love each other. Maya fell asleep to the sound of Sage's breathing and the distant call of an owl, feeling more content than she'd known was possible. She woke before dawn to find Sage already dressed and sitting outside the tent with 2 cups of coffee. Good morning, beautiful, Sage said softly. I want to show you something. Maya dressed quickly and followed Sage to a small rise that overlooked the entire valley. The sun was just beginning to touch the peaks, painting them gold and rose against a sky the color of amethyst. Mist rose from the stream, creating an ethereal quality that made the whole scene look like something from a dream. It's like watching the world wake up, Maya said, accepting the coffee Sage offered. That's exactly what it is. Sage's voice was quiet but intense. Maya, there's something I want to say to you. Maya turned to look at her, noting the way Sage's hands were trembling slightly around her coffee mug. The first time I saw you, Sage continued, you looked like you were going to vibrate right out of your skin from anxiety. You were so clearly running from something, so obviously lost and trying to find your way. And all I wanted to do was offer you some kind of peace. Maya's heart began to beat faster. But what I discovered, Sage said, setting down her coffee and taking Maya's hands, is that you didn't need my peace. You needed to find your own. And watching you do that, watching you learn to trust yourself, to channel your intensity into creativity and courage, has been the greatest privilege of my life. Tears began to prick Maya's eyes as she realized what was happening. "You were never chaos that needed to be contained," Sage said, her voice growing stronger. "You were energy that needed the right direction. And somehow, miraculously, that direction led you to me." Sage released one of Maya's hands to reach into her jacket pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. "Maya-chan," she said, opening the box to reveal a simple, beautiful ring, a golden band set with a stone that caught the morning light like captured fire. "You are my chaos and I am your peace, and together we're something neither of us could be alone. Will you marry me?" Maya looked at the ring, at Sage's face bright with love and hope, at the wilderness stretching around them in all directions. This was her life, not the one she'd planned or expected, but the one she'd been brave enough to claim. This woman who saw her clearly and loved her completely, this place that felt like home, this moment that felt like the beginning of everything. "Yes," she said, the word emerging as a whisper and then growing stronger. "Yes, of course yes." Sage's smile was radiant as she slipped the ring onto Maya's finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her hand specifically. They kissed as the sun cleared the peaks, filling the valley with golden light. Maya felt something settle in her chest, not the restless bird of her anxiety, but something warm and steady and utterly at peace. When they broke apart, both of them were crying and laughing and holding each other like they never intended to let go. "I love you," Maya said against Sage's neck. "I love you so much it feels like my heart might explode from happiness." "I love you too," Sage replied. "All of you. Your chaos and your calm, your questions and your certainty, your restlessness and your capacity for peace. I want to spend the rest of my life learning to love you better." They sat in the growing warmth of the morning sun, watching mist rise from the valley floor and planning a future that felt as vast and full of possibility as the wilderness around them. Maya thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, lost and anxious and trying to squeeze herself into a life that didn't fit, and marveled at the journey that had brought her here. She'd come to Portland running from herself, but what she'd found was herself, her truest, wildest, most authentic self. And she'd found someone brave enough to love that self completely. The ring caught the light as Maya lifted her hand to touch Sage's face, and she realized this was what happiness looked like. Not the absence of challenge or change, but the presence of someone who would meet whatever came with steady love and unwavering commitment. She was chaos and Sage was peace, but together they were something entirely new, a love story written in the language of wilderness and trust, of two people brave enough to be completely themselves with each other. As the sun climbed higher and filled their hidden valley with warmth and light, Maya Chun and Sage Williams began planning the rest of their lives together, surrounded by the vast and beautiful wilderness that had taught them both how to be free.